Good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. We still have a few people logging in, so we're going to give them a minute or two to get settled, and then we'll get underway. And while we're waiting, please tell us where you're tuning in from in the chat. Also, be sure to like the video where you're watching to help us share this content with others in your network. So we'll give it another couple of minutes. So feel free to send us where you're joining in from in the chat. Hi, Mohammed. Great to have you, Jaime. Hello, Jason. And we got Chris from London. Everybody's slowly tuning in. So welcome, everybody. Hi, Marie-Louise from Sweden. And Tracy from Lebanon. Good morning, Martin. Hi, feel free to mention where you're tuning in from. We've got Falahan from Nigeria as well, and Mohammed from United Arab Emirates. Welcome all. Naif from Riyadh. And David from West Yorkshire. Welcome, David. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Thank you all for joining us today on our webinar, Navigating Post-Pandemic Capital Planning Challenges, and presented to you by IFMA EMEA and Nuvolo. I am Lara Pamen. I'm the Managing Director of IFMA EMEA, and I will be your host and moderator today. Now, before I introduce you to our 4 speakers, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded. You will be able to share a link with, we will be able to share a link with you after the event is complete, and we welcome you to revisit the content yourselves and share it with colleagues or within your network. We also invite your comments and questions. Please look at the Q&A chat box on your screen. If you think of a question for the speakers at any point, just type it in there, and I will either pose it to our speakers at the time or hold it for the discussion portion at the end of the event. We've got people joining from Ghana and from Nigeria, from Austria, so from everywhere in the world. This is great. Now, regarding our topic today, we can start by saying that many organizations are facing issues in planning capital projects and are looking how to navigate these new challenges. Now, what ways are there today to understand the impact of investment, to determine priorities, create adaptable plans, and control out-of-range costs? And how can data and connected technology help make evidence-based decisions that align with the overall strategy of the organization? I'm very proud to have a group of experts today joining us that have each many years of experience on this topic. Let me start by welcoming Eric Hackinson. Hi, Eric. You're on mute still.
We'll try again. Happy
Yes.
Thursday, everyone.
Happy Thursday, Eric. Can you please present yourself to your audience?
Yeah, I'm based out of Oslo, Norway, but working with Circle K as a global fuel retailer, represented in all over the world, more than 10,000 stores, and securing work for 120,000 employees, having their kind of offices and workplace at our stores, and also then maintaining 10,000 stores, a million assets, and for sure with retail, the growth and securing capital that gives the right return for our company. So that's part of my facility building in this company. And with experience in this company for 40 years, a little bit of experience, I would say.
I think so, yes. Thank you, Eric, and welcome. Our second speaker today is Felix Haas. Welcome, Felix.
Welcome, everybody.
Can you please present yourself to our audience today?
Sure. So my name is Felix Haas. I'm with Lionpoint. I'm based out of Frankfurt in Germany. With Lionpoint, I'm heading up our real estate and facilities technology and consulting practice in Europe. And I've worked in FM and corporate real estate for the last 20 years. And primarily, I've been focusing on technology-driven transformation. And I'm happy to be on this panel today.
Happy to have you here. Chad Coombs is our third expert. Good day, Chad.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, where you're from. My name's Chad Coombs. I'm a director of Sircle. Sircle with an S. We spell it things slightly different here. So Sircle is a UK-based but providing surveys European-wide. We've been celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. We've been lucky enough to work on a wide range of properties, including retail sites from Macarthur Glen across all of Europe, the City of London, lots of NHS trusts, commercial properties, and we're about providing accurate information on people's estates so they can make informed decisions about how to use, maintain, and manage that property.
Excellent, perfect. And then last but not least, we'll have Oliver joining us from Nuvolo. Hi, Oliver.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name's Oliver Ridgewell. So I'm Regional Vice President of Nuvolo EMEA. I've been working in the sort of prop tech space for around about the past sort of 13 years now, helping organizations in to better manage their real estate portfolio, whether that's physical maintenance, leasing, capital planning, whatever that may be. And I've helped organizations both in the EMEA region and also had a time period spent in Australia as well doing the same thing. So that's my background. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So I think we've got more than 100 years of experience altogether. I think this will be an interesting discussion. So let's start with some questions here for you. I'll maybe start with Eric. Effectively managing budgets and executing effective financial planning is of the utmost importance to most organizations, particularly in the ultra lean post-pandemic times we live in today. What are for you the main issues facing organizations when we're talking about capital planning, and how are Circle K addressing their needs? I think you're on mute again. I think this is the phrase most said over the last 3 years, so don't worry.
I'm happy to get that question. It's a real challenge within Circle K to do this in the right way. And it comes to the fact that we have 10,000 stores, thousands of people with good ideas for growth, maintenance, replacing the car wash machine. We are managing more than 1 million assets on those 10,000 stores. And capturing that input and securing the right priority, it's a challenge. We manage about 12,000 capital projects every year, from changing an oven to building a new store, and securing that we get the right priority on these, delivering the return, meeting our strategic goals, delivering on our legal requirements. It's a big task, and it's really where we need to move into a software-based solution to capture it in a more structured way. It's still a little bit spreadsheet and yellow stickers, and prioritizing 12,000 capital projects is a challenge for us, absolutely.
I can definitely understand that. So I hear prioritization and looking for the right tools to do that. I'm sure we'll get back on that later in the conversation. I'd like to turn to Chad now. Chad, the goal of strategic facilities capital planning is to understand the performance of assets and prepare accurate budgets. What is for you the role of facility condition data in this process? And what challenges do you see in collecting this data?
There's a number of issues you face when collecting data. It's a lot of the times the clients don't fully understand their own properties, what they've got, how big they are, what they actually manage and maintain as well. So it's first and foremost, we try and sit down with the clients to understand, well, what do you want the data for and how are you going to use it, basically? And when you talk about condition data, are you talking about just for a small project? Felix mentioned there, he's got 12,000 projects happening each year, but one project can affect another. So what we try to do is understand, right, what do you want the information for? How long do you want it over? Is it just to help on one project? Is it looking for a 5-year, a 10-year, or 15-year plan on your capital projects? But also, what information do you actually want from it? You mentioned condition, but then you've also got things like make, manufacturer, serial number. Are you looking to do PPMs off the back of it? So really, when it comes to collecting data, it's really understanding what do you want that data for and how do you plan to use it. Once we've got that, we can sit down with you and then work out a survey program to actually collect it in a method, in a way that it can be used more frequently, whether it be in something Nuvolo like Ollie provides, or another system, or you just want it a simple spreadsheet, basically. So it's vitally important to understand what you're asking for before we say we want a condition survey done.
Absolutely, and it could definitely help prioritizing the projects where Eric was referring to, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Felix, organizational executives or executives and leaders don't often have a background in facilities, and that makes it difficult for them to make decisions on facilities and understanding really what facilities are. What data outputs are they looking for to help make more informed decisions? So with the data that Chat was referring to, what are the data outputs they're looking for?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. I do want to answer it in such a way to let me introduce some personas in an organization to answer that question properly. So maybe let's start with the CFO. It's an important person in every organization. And typically what a CFO is always going after is avoid unforeseen swings in the cash flow. And whether this is OPEX or CAPEX related spend, we all know real estate, if you're talking about CAPEX spend in real estate, you're talking about significant amounts. So what the CFO is looking for is a forecast, whether it is any CAPEX or OPEX related real estate spend, the CFO can rely on, just to avoid unforeseen swings in the cash flow. The other one the CFO is always interested in is how real estate can contribute to the overall organization's FP&A process. FP&A is financial planning and analysis, and of course to reduce the overall real estate spend. Another persona I want to talk to is a business unit lead. So it's pretty much think about an internal real estate or facilities or management organization. So that's a client, right? And the client is looking for information to better understand business requirements as it relates to always keeping a healthy balance between space, supply, and demand. And it's not only crucial for business units, obviously it's crucial for facilities management. And what business unit leads, department leads oftentimes request is flexibility and workplace experience. So these terminologies came across a lot, not only in the past, but also in the new normal, right? Facilities management is key in providing data and information for business unit leads to make informed decisions, whether they want to expand, whether they want to demanding new space somewhere in a new geography. So is it an owned space? Is it leased space? This is what business unit leads are looking for. And let's use another example. Let's use the head of HR. The head of HR has to respond to employee expectations. And we all know they're in the new normal, there's a lot of them and they're changing. And also the head of HR has to make sure to attract and retain talent. But while at the same time, the head of HR has to, act on behalf of the company and therefore in the best interest of the company. So it's a challenge. And what the head of HR, again, needs to understand is the same thing. The space supply and demand, and understand also limitations and opportunities. What is it that facility management can contribute to really up workplace and employee experience? But also the head of HR has to keep in mind that everything has a price tag, right? And finally, there's the head of FM. And the head of FM pretty much has to provide all this information and data, definitely has to leverage technology. And the head of FM, again, this is the person who constantly is managing the balance between space, supply, and demand, and is leveraging input from all these departments. So to me, this is kind of the ecosystem every organization is in. And as we can see, the head of FM is playing a major role in this.
It feels like a FM is a spider in the web in an organization that needs to talk and communicate to everybody in the organizations, and specifically to the different personas that you were referring to. Excellent. Thank you, Felix. Ollie, to you, capital planning for facilities is often full of uncertainty and assumptions. Would you agree on that? From your perspective, what are you hearing when you speak to customers?
So I guess answering the first question, yes, I would agree. I think that there can be examples where a lot of assumptions are made, particularly to Chad's point, is if you don't have the data and you haven't outlined what your aspirations are with that data when you go to collect it. So if you, for example, don't collect the data you need, then you're going to be making assumptions or guesstimates in order to build those capital plans out. I guess coming to the second point, when we're sort of speaking to customers, the hardest thing that they're trying to achieve, or the thing they're struggling with most, is even once you do get that data, it's being able to interpret it and present it to the various personas that Felix mentions so that it's understandable to them, because a CFO doesn't necessarily want to look at the condition details of a boiler. They want to understand, what is the impact if I don't make this investment? Does it pose a risk to my business? So prioritization of work to build those capital plans and be able to have multiple different scenarios that you can easily compare, contrast, evaluate. That's really important. And if you imagine the size of estate that Eric has, 1 million assets, it's impossible to do that without having some sort of technology or a systematic approach to applying that. So you need to get the right data, you need to be able to interpret it. But the interesting thing, and what I think is often the most challenging, is you've also got to be able to interpret what the business requirements are. What are the business's priorities, and how do you apply those to the data that you have? And to look at it at the moment, we've got big pressures to change, particularly the office space at the moment, to suit the new hybrid working model and those sorts of things. So businesses are, considering investments to adjust their office space, whilst at the same time we have this continuing emergence of the sustainability agenda. And those priorities can be legislative, can be business driven, can even be a factor for the employee base now as well, and whether you can hire the right talent. So capital planners have got to be able to interpret those business demands and business priorities, and then apply the data that they've got to understand what investments they need to make, and make sure they're not duplicating investment. You don't want to invest in an office space that you then in 9 months need to completely refurbish because it doesn't fit your sustainability model. And the same goes for any type of property portfolio, to be honest. So those are some of the biggest challenges that I'm sort of hearing from the customers, and we're trying to help understand, interpret, and move forward with.
Makes sense. So getting the right data, know how to interpret it, and know how to translate it into the business priorities and actually execute those. Excellent. Thank you. Now, leaders are tasked with creating a plan that balances facilities needs to the highest benefit of the organization. And this is a question to the group, to all of you. What key steps should be taken to help their company ensure their facilities are serving them in the best way possible, not only now, but also in the future? Who would like to answer that or to elaborate on that? What are the key steps? Kat, you first.
From my point of view, it comes back down to data again. It's about having that correct information, as Ollie mentioned there, and Felix. You need that long-term plan, and there's so many variables in there. But it's about having the processes, so you have the data in hand all the time. So once you've got that information, it doesn't stay that way. You need to maintain it. So internally, there should be some processes to keep that information up to date as assets change, as room functions change, as buildings change. There needs to be a process to maintain that information. So at any given point, you can go back to the information and extract what you need, whether it be for the CFO for his long-term planning, whether it be for the environmental guys because they're looking at zero carbon on that side of things. So for me, processes are a big part of managing the data.
Absolutely.
If I can just sort of add in on that, I think it really varies depending on the type of sort of site that you have and the type of properties that you're running, and that really defines the type of data that you then need, an organization like Sircle to collect. And if I think back over the number of years that I've worked with different types of customers, the type of estate and therefore the information you're trying to understand varies greatly. So I've worked with the Ministry of Justice and their prison estate, and the data that they're trying to collect about the prison estate is quite markedly different to Circle K, for example. In prisons it was a lot about security, are the security systems working. In done work in the past with Network Rail, and they have a measure called the station stewardship measure, which is a lot about safety of the people on the platforms and so on. And so that's a very different sort of metric and piece of information to be gathering. And then increasingly we see with both our corporate real estate clients, but also retail clients and so on, is experience is really what they're trying to understand. So it's how does the facility affect those things, and how do you therefore measure the performance of the facility and then understand the investment that you're trying to make to improve the measures that are most critical to your type of business.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying as well is that actually it's obviously depends on the type of facility, but the different steps to take are identical, whether you are looking at, for example, a prison or Circle K or an office environment. The steps are actually identical to take.
A few different data points and different measures and different outputs, but the actual process, I don't think, changes that dramatically. It's just understanding what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly. Makes sense. Felix, would you like to add something to that?
Well, I believe it's important to that earlier point, data. Imagine facility condition assessment reveals that there's a strong desire to invest in the building. However, keep in mind, maybe the overall portfolio strategy may tell you something really different. Maybe you have an exit strategy for that property, right? So again, technology really can help to combine these data points. You source them, combine them from different sources. That's what technology is about, and that's a big advantage.
And if we look at leaders, they can address many of their issues with the help of software. We're already in the conversations here referred to that. How can software help improve the process? What role does it play in measuring performance and supporting decision making?
I believe it is pretty much technology allowing us to maintain data, keep data in a very good shape, so make sure we have the appropriate data quality, and this is what allows us to develop KPIs and metrics. And again, this in my mind is something leaders require to make informed decisions. And technology is just an enabler. I have a couple of examples here. So again, let's talk about these personas, right? Imagine whether it is the head of real estate or FM, together with the head of HR. The new normal. There's one key metric that I came across quite a bit over the last couple of months. It is the on-site off-site ratio. So what it means is, right, expectations have been set. A lot of employees demand this hybrid model. So for facilities management, it's crucial to understand on-site versus off-site. And this nicely plays into a couple of other metrics, like, and we're using these metrics for quite a bit. It's the desk sharing ratio in an office, as an example, or it is the space utilization in general. Regardless if it is office space or any other space class, right? Occupancy and vacancy rate, because these metrics, if you follow them and maintain them tightly, they can be used to determine FM service provisioning, portfolio rationalization, together with a heavy impact on the CapEx pipeline ultimately, because we want to prioritize your projects. And there's also some more technical metrics. Technology allows you to make informed decisions on that. Let's take basic examples. And I think that they're known in the industry for many, many years. CM to PM ratio, so corrective versus planned maintenance. It allows you to really make an informed decision whether you want to replace an asset rather than spending a fortune of money on what is it, ad hoc maintenance. Yeah, I think these are all great examples, right?
Absolutely. And talking about that as well, is there, let's say, if we look at the responsibles who need to collect that data, we might have the tools, but is the skill set present as well in organizations to collect the data, to interpret the data, to translate the data into those, or can we? Is there still a need for improvement there?
I'll take that one. So
Sure.
when it comes to collecting data, there's several issues you need to think about. You need an independent view when you collect the data. You need somebody who's impartial, who's not thinking about anything apart from, I want this data for this asset. I don't care if it's going to be replaced in 6 months. This is the condition is at the moment. We use a range of software, but just going back slightly to the question before about technology, there's different CAFM systems out there, and they're improving all the time. I'm sure Oliver will cover this shortly, but systems like Nuvolo actually link in with assets as well. So when you're collecting data, you actually need to consider a wider range of technology about where is it going to go. Do we have to use the CAFM system's own app to pick it up? And there's certain data that needs to link into it as well. So when it comes to software and collecting the data, it's that independence, it's understanding what you need to collect, but it's also using the right information to sort of think forward quite a lot as well.
Absolutely. And are there any, let's say, potholes leaders need to avoid when implementing a plan? Is there anything that they should avoid?
Not collecting too much data. That is the biggest thing. They ask for, you set out a schedule saying, right, this is the information we're going to collect, based on your own requirements. But then they have 15 other lines of data, and you're like, well, I'm happy to collect it. It'll cost more money, but are you actually going to use it? And that happens so frequently. We're constantly putting clients back saying, look, it's just too much data. You'll never manage it.
Yes, exactly. It's from what I hear as well in our industry that in some cases, organizations want to install a lot of sensors and a lot of technology into buildings, but actually are not aware of how to collect the data properly and what to do with it exactly. So it brings us back to the start of the conversation, where we really also need to ask the question to organizations and to leaders of organizations, what would you like to do with the data? So I think that's an essential point here.
Laura, can I
Please.
just jump in on the data requirements? To the retail business, where you have 10,000 locations and our key assets are our customers. We want to deliver a consistent offer every day, 24/7, at 10,000 locations. Knowing the state of art on how we are doing is critical. Even though we are number one in a lot of markets, assets are breaking down, and every 20 seconds, an asset is down at a Circle K store. Capturing these more than 1 million incidents and defects during the year, building the platform for how we are doing, and being world-class in benchmarking, having this data is absolutely critical. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. In the case of Circle K, I think this is essential. But is it also essential for smaller organizations that have, for example, only one building to manage? Maybe Oliver, you can answer that.
I think again, it depends on the type of business. I would say there's always going to be some level of data that you want to collect, but you can have, a data center, for example, might only be one building, but every piece of key infrastructure in that building is absolutely critical to the delivery of their service. If the HVAC unit fails in a data center, then the temperatures start rising, they start turning off servers, people lose their service. So, but yes, if you have one building, the burden of managing that building, I mean, largely we all do this. We all live somewhere, whether we lease it, whether we own it. We all manage one place that we live in our own lives. We manage leases, we maintain it. We, think about the capital planning as to whether we're going to refurbish the kitchen or not. We're all doing that ourselves. It's just our technology is this. And on one site, it might not be as critical to collect all of the data and then, roll it out. But it depends on the size and the complexity of the site. But the larger, the more complex, both in terms of size, scale, and number, the more important it becomes, because there's only so many things that we can manage in our head, and that's where you've got to then collect it in a consistent fashion, put it into some sort of a system, so that can help you with the calculations and the computation of that information, so you can inform the decisions that the relevant personas are making. And that to me is sort of the logical step. And it's just the larger the volume, the harder, almost impossibility it becomes to do that manually. A million assets, you can't do that manually, really.
We can try to imagine or manage our own household budget from an Excel sheet, but I think once we go to a larger sort of building, software is definitely something that could help us here. What are for you the key success factors? And I'm addressing all of you. The key success factors for those who are achieving success in capital planning. How do they know they're making progress? Who would like to answer that?
I'll take first hit, but I'll be brief so someone can dive in afterwards. So I do think that again comes back to the priorities of the business and why you're making those investments. If you're measuring yourself on a net zero target, and you're making investments in running capital projects in order to improve the energy efficiency of your site, then you've got a very clear metric that you can drive to. If you're talking more broadly around condition assessments and so on, then there are industry standards that you can look at and industry measures that you can look at, whether that's something like the FCI. You understand the facilities condition index of your building. You can see if you're making improvements, and it might not always be about making improvements. It might be about sustaining the current standard. If you're happy with your FCI at whatever percentage it might be today, and your assets are running fine, you just don't want to see any tail off, then that's what you've got to do. I think back to the sort of the public-private partnerships and so on in the UK, where the construction of, say, a hospital would be outsourced and then managed for a number of years, and at the end of that contract, that would be handed back into public ownership or to another supplier to manage, and everything needed to be handed over at a certain condition level. So the organization managing that hospital just wanted to maintain it enough to be just above that condition level. Anything below was going to be a problem, and they certainly didn't want to be way above, because they'd invested too much from their organization's perspective. So again, really comes back to, what is your organization trying to get out of the capital plan? And that's the interpretation of the business priorities and the facilities data. And that's I think the area that's sometimes some of the most difficult to do. Politics is hard to interpret sometimes.
Indeed. Felix, would you like to add something to that?
Well, first of all, I only can echo what Ollie just said. And again, I talked a little bit about KPIs and metrics. Definitely projects prioritized to business needs. To me, it's a key KPI, because what it does is it tells you about the project portfolio aligned to the business. There's two others I want to mention related to this. One is the number of projects you have on your CapEx pipeline without a business case, because it helps you to prioritize, right? So this is it's a very basic KPI or metric, however you want to call it. It helps you to assess the proportion of projects without a thoroughly defined business justification. And I do want to add a third one, projects with scope changes. I think everybody who has managed CapEx project or executed construction project came across this. And again, this is to assess the deviation magnitude from the original plan. And it tells you a lot about the maturity of your process, of your organization, and if there is potential to improve this.
Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else would like to add something, Eric?
Yes, please. No, I think this is delivering on the targets and the return over time. Our company is divided in several business units, and those that constantly deliver on the plan, I would say that they have success. They get the trust, they got the money, and the company is comfortable that they will deliver. Shareholders, owners, management. So delivering on the capital plan over years is the success. And to do that, you also not need software to manage the planning. You need to have software to manage the capital through the process, the approval process, the execution, securing that the cash flow is measured, not when the vendor is paid, but when the commitment is made and the forecast in the process. Because we need to spend our money that is within the budget to deliver good projects. And leaving a lot of money on the table at the end of the year is not good planning either. So delivering on this through the projects over years, that's the success.
Excellent.
Can I just add a comment on there? Success is relative to the individual, but should be considered amongst the whole organisation. We work with a very large trust in London, and success is different from the capital guys. Obviously, as mentioned, they're hitting, getting projects done on time, on budget, for example, making the maximum money. But that project then affects so many other people. So it affects the success of the sustainability or environmental manager to meet their targets. It affects the overall trust. Can they? Is a minimal downtime for theatres, for things like that, so they can get patients through and treated on time. So success is quite relative. So with this London Trust, every project that's put forward is actually worked on by a whole group of people. They sit down on the major projects and look at the sustainability. They talk to the people, look at the IoT, or the Internet of Things, to discuss, well, if we're going to replace this asset, is there a better one out there that you're aware of that can actually be used so we can reduce our maintenance moving forward? And that's how they deem success, basically, is how it affects everybody.
Excellent. Thank you for that. We have some people in the audience who are definitely agreeing what we're talking about here, so that's a good thing. I do want to refer to a question from Isatu. Actually, two questions where stated the development of multi-year capital plans requires predictive tools as well as an understanding of asset life cycles is a challenge. And he would like us to comment on that. Anybody wants to give this one a go? Chat.
So asset life cycles is a big statement. You've got your standard 25 years manufacturer's life cycle, and they assume it's going to be used 9 to 5, 9 in the morning to 5 days a week. Realistically, you need to take a lot of things into consideration about actually how the building is being used. So in hospitals, for example, one asset could be used, air conditioning, for example, in the theatres can be used very heavily 20 hours a day as they continually have the theatres working on major operations. But then the same asset in a different location could be used an hour a day just to provide HVAC in meeting rooms, for example. So you do need to consider those side of things as well. But the last 2 years proven that the building is going to be used so differently. The hybrid work from home, work from office side of things will change again about how life cycle will change. So it's trying to, when you say forward planning, it's very, very hard to forward plan. You can predict maybe the next year, but beyond that, it's a real challenge to do that. And I don't know anybody that's actually found a way of successfully predicting that yet. And if you do, please let me know.
Yeah, there's no magic box that says it all. No, unfortunately. Because time is running quickly and we have 15 minutes left. Eric, I would like to ask you a question in particular. What vital thing have you learned in your capital planning experience that you didn't know or couldn't find the answer on the internet?
That's a hard one. I think it's really about, at least for Circle K, it's the complexity and the the big number of locations that makes it very, very difficult. We have implemented Nuvolo as a work order management system now during the last year, and seeing the value from getting facts on the state of our assets make a big difference. Maintenance is very often seen as cost, but maintenance is really to serve our customers 24/7, and getting insight on uptime and state of the art of our equipment, number of breakdowns. It gives a complete different perspective where maintenance actually creates value. So taking that into the capital planning process is probably a wake-up call for many people working with maintenance.
Yes. Yeah. A question for Felix and probably Chad as well. Regarding data collection and review, what two things would you both suggest to people in the audience to gain an accurate view of asset condition?
Well, the first thing that jumps to mind, and I mentioned it before, is make sure you collect all required information. So again, I'm giving you a real life example I came across a couple of years ago, and the way how to look at it is combine let's say facility condition assessment data with real estate portfolio data points, because here's what happened. A facility condition assessment revealed or surfaced a massive demand for investment in a property. On the other hand, the real estate portfolio strategy maintained in a system indicated an exit strategy for the building. So here's what happened. It's pretty much technology prevented this organization to spend money on a feasibility study on how to completely remodel that building. It's not a fortune of money, but at least we saved some money just combining different data points. So to me, I mean, the key takeaway is don't narrow things when you look at data. If you can leverage data sourced from multiple locations within the broader ecosystem of an organization, make use out of it.
Chad, what's your reaction to that?
So for me, it's I can only talk about when we go about doing the survey sort of thing. So when you want to gain an accurate view of your asset condition, it's understanding what the survey approach is as well. We had an example recently at a sports stadium in West London, whereas we've gone and done the asset survey. We've picked up the make, model, manufacturer, added SFG, life cycle, done a condition assessment, but it's a visual condition assessment. So you've looked at the basic information. You know, are the belts good? Are the nipples all greased? Does it look like it's been maintained? And there's a boiler, looks absolutely fine, all nice and sparkling and that sort of thing. So we put down I think it was a C rating and put down as life cycle condition. We got a call about 6 months later saying basically, why do you give this a C rating when it's not working? Well, it's a boiler, middle of summer, it wasn't working basically. So didn't need heat now. It's actually been switched off for the past 3 years, but it's a visual assessment. We're not actually turning things on and off and surveying, doing that kind of assessment. So it's understanding what is the survey approach to gain the condition assessment. Are you actually doing any physical testing? Is it purely visual and that side of things as well? I'd also sort of consider who the person is doing the survey as well. We only have in our own in-house time-served engineers doing the surveys. These people have actually maintained assets. They've got a full understanding what they are. We also know other companies out there will use students and they'll go around with a book and they'll look at the asset out and they'll give you basic information. So it's understanding who is actually doing that assessment as well. Once you know that, you can then refine the survey to collect the information, do the testing or whatever you need basically to give you that accurate view basically. So yes, it's understanding what you're asking for.
Yeah, so we're coming back almost a circle is around to understanding what you want and what you would like to achieve. Maybe a last question for you, Oliver. Do you have one piece of advice on selecting the right technology to drive capital planning?
I have to stop myself from just saying pick number one. I don't think that's a very, very fair response to the question. Look, I mean, there are an abundance of technologies in the market, and each has its own specialism, and so it's making sure that you truly understand the reason for purchasing, the outputs that you want to get, and the detail of the requirements that you're trying to get from the system before going out and sort of seeing, because you look at many systems and your eyes start, you can do everything and all of a sudden you want to, and it's really, no, this is the reason that we're purchasing, this is what we're trying to do, let's get the tool set that's sort of best aligned to that. Right. I do add something just onto to the question you asked to Felix and Chad, though, if possible, which I think the question was something like, what have you learned without Googling it?
Yes.
And so I think over the time that I've sort of spent looking at capital planning is complexity, like Eric said, it's complexity of combining the data, because whilst we've talked a lot today about condition, but you might also have asbestos, fire risk, disabled access, energy management information, and being able to take all of those different data points and combine them into a view so that you're actually making a holistic plan that not just says this is my condition, but also understands this is the risk associated with failure of that asset, whether that's failure that causes a risk to the fabric, to the people, to the environment, to the security, whatever it might be. You've got a load of different inputs that you need to be able to combine and interpret. And it's that combination of different types of data set that over time I realized the complexity of that. And that seems to only become more complex as we have more ways of now gathering and collecting data. You've got the surveys that Chad may do. They might come in an Excel, they might come in a CAD file, they might come in a BIM model now. You might get sensor data coming in from assets. All of that data needs to have some way of not just being collected, but actually interpreted in a uniform way. That's something that you realize that seems to get more complex every year at the moment, I think.
So there's still a lot of work to be done to get that, let's say, more simplified and to make sure that everybody understands that capital planning is essential, whether you're in a smaller building or in large or managing large buildings or different types of buildings. I think we have a couple of minutes left, and I would like to take the opportunity to get to some of the questions that were raised by the people who are pre-registered. They send in a couple of questions, and I would like to address one of them first. Capital projects funding. Is it the landlord or the tenant's responsibility? A very practical question, I think a very important one. Is there anybody who could want to answer this one?
The answer is both.
I see people nodding, and why is that?
I guess it's about what responsibilities you hold, whether you're the landlord or the tenant. If you're responsible for the assets, then you have to build the plans for those assets.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's in your lease or license, simple as that.
Yes. Yes. What are the post-pandemic KPIs to consider for capacity planning management?
Is it Felix who earlier talked around the on-site off-site model?
Yeah, indeed, that's one I definitely would start monitoring, and then of course occupancy as a whole. There's another one that I came across recently. It is, since everybody is used to work from home, not commuting every day into the city, there's another expectation arising, people to move into, well, corporate places, but could be like a WeWork or any other type of service, but closer. And there is there's another, well, I would say it's an emerging metric. It's like a satisfaction KPI as it relates to commute time. That's something, yeah, as I said, I came across recently. It's quite an intriguing one because this will really make an impact on the real estate portfolio as a whole, but also how you service the portfolio.
Mm-hmm. I think obviously what we've noticed is, and specifically post-pandemic, that work is no longer a location or a place. It is an activity that can be done in many places, obviously, and that also adds a complexity to capital planning, and it adds a level of flexibility for capital planning and for real estate managers and facility managers. Do you think that this will evolve even more towards a flexible solution, or will this stabilize and will people return back to the office for most part? What's your opinion on that? Because that also has an impact on the capital planning of aspects.
From a Sircle point of view, we've got regional offices. Some we own, some we lease. We, just going on sort of Felix's point there, we were due to redevelop one of our offices in Manchester to expand, to put more desks in, taking more scanners and printers and things like that as well, as the company grew. When the pandemic hit, obviously we told everybody, right, grab your kit, go home, and we'll work out how we're going to deal with this, basically. What we're looking at now is actually the satisfaction point of view. A lot of our surveyors actually like working from home because they get more time. You've got a whole range of people. You've got some people with young children. They start a bit earlier. They do their school runs. They come back and work during the day, do school in the evening, work in the evening, things like that as well. So actually, the whole pandemic has changed the way that us as a company owner, as a estate owner as well, basically how we're using that. We're actually reducing it down. But the key performance indicator, one of which mentioned on there, was that our surveyors are a lot happier. We're getting more from them as well. But it all does also affect on technology. In all fairness, we're using a lot more technology, not to keep an eye on people, but to share what people are doing day to day, because they're not having that ability to come into the office and meet anymore. So we have company get-togethers on Teams once a month just to discuss about what's happening in the world, anybody new started, and new technology and that as well. But yeah, from us, it's the capital planning is really been scaled back a lot. We're not a huge estate, I appreciate that, but in a personal view, yeah, capital planning is changing the way that this state is changing as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Maybe time for one last question from Clara in the chat box. How are the companies and the users accept the reused furniture and other parts of the office space? It's a very important initiative to reduce our impact and have sustainable buildings, but not sure about the acceptance. Any feedback on that?
I'm afraid I don't have anything to add on that particular one. It's an interesting question that I'm not aware of anybody who's had a challenge accepting reused furniture. I'm actually interested, if we've got one more minute. I think it was the previous question we applied to how things have changed in the office environment. I'm interested to understand from Eric, how do you believe that the pandemic has affected the way that you go about the operations of your retail store? I've heard from other retailers that they're far more focused. They've really had to raise employee experience in order to bring footfall back. Is that the same at Circle K, or is it different?
I think we have been working at our stores through the pandemic in a very challenging period. Our employees have really stepped up and helped the community with the services that we do in the market. When it comes to the offices, we believe in a combined solution. People need to give each other a hug from time to time. We need to build that common sense of being one team. I think we have learned to work through the pandemic on teams, and we have overcome several challenges, but there is a need to be in the office as well. So it's a combined mix, I would say.
Mm-hmm. With that being said, I think we're almost at the top of the hour, and I would like to thank everyone who joined us for today's webinar. Eric, Felix, Chat, and Oliver, thank you for sharing your insights and expertise today. If the audience has any additional questions or would like to connect directly to IFMA EMEA, Nuvolo, Circle K, Lionpoint, or Sircle, you can either reach out directly using the contact information on this slide, or you can reach out via Twitter or LinkedIn. Thank you for your time today and have a wonderful rest of your day. Good day.